Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I will reiterate, Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists, but more important than that, we're very good friends. We're such good friends, in fact, that we hung out last week instead of doing another episode of the show.
We went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, which I had never been to, and then we walked the entire length of Toronto twice and ended up at a Raptors game, and the Raptors did not win.
No, they did not do very well, but that's
playing
part of the
Bulls.
course this season. Ben, when you're not wandering Toronto aimlessly and buying an insane amount of books and comic books...
There's nothing insane about reading.
That's true, I agree with you. Where could people find your latest musings on the automotive world?
You can find my work at Motor Trend, at Haggerty, and at driving.ca. Oh, and Capital One Auto Navigator.
That's very good. Okay, that's plenty. I've got a couple to share with you. You can while you're at the Capital One Auto Navigator or driving.ca looking at Ben stuff, you can probably find some of my works alongside them, and you can also find my stuff at autotrader.ca.
Sammy and I spent a good, 20 minutes before the podcast talking about actors who've appeared in the most film franchises. We're not going to rehash that now, but I've always wondered if anyone out there would be interested in hearing the stuff that we talk about before the podcast starts.
No.
The preamble.
The preamble. We have lengthy preamble. I think that's the thing that people don't realize, that before we start the show, we warm up, we chat, we get ready, we catch up on each other's days and lives, and then we talk about a completely tangential topic. And then sometimes car related, but
And I don't know if there's any interest in having these go live. I mean, some of them would have to be heavily edited, but if anyone is interested in hearing things that we talk about that aren't necessarily car related, just let us know, and maybe we can find a way to leak these online somehow.
Okay, sure. I mean, and when you call it a leak, of course, people will get interested immediately. Some people's ears perk up at the concept of hearing something they're not supposed to be.
Yeah, something accidental.
That's right.
Hot mic.
Now, speaking of accidental, I accidentally found myself in a 2025 BMW X3 this past week, and I didn't realize that this was a whole new generation of the BMW X3. This is the fourth generation X3.
You didn't realize that until we started recording tonight, right? That's when you figured it out.
That I drove it?
No, that it was a fourth generation.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. I mean, to me, the X3 is I would have imagined that the X3 is a very important part of BMW's portfolio, and I would have imagined as well, alongside that they'd be jamming this down every automotive journalist, shoving the keys in everyone's pockets. Like, you guys got to drive our hottest SUV. But maybe that's not the case anymore.
Well, why do you think that's not the case?
Because I just feel like I haven't heard much about it. It basically launched midway through last autumn, I suppose, and we're now getting it on the roads, and it's come out with some pretty interesting changes. I think visually you can definitely still tell that it's an X3. It still looks like the outgoing model in a lot of ways. It is a bit bigger inside, and it also shares a few details that you'll find on some of BMW's more modern vehicles, more high-tech and expensive vehicles, like those weird, flappy style handles. Is that the best way to describe them?
I don't know what you're talking about. You got to be more.
They don't have handles that protrude. They don't have.
Are you talking about door handles?
Yeah, door handles.
Okay. I'm glad
that don't protrude out of the door. They're kind of like little flaps that are shaved tight with the doors.
Are you saying?
And then
that
the other thing,
if you had mittens on or something, it would be difficult to open them?
Yeah, if you had big, bulky mittens.
I'm driving a 3 Series right now, and I haven't noticed that. And I have been wearing mittens, but now that you've put this ahead, I'm going to take a second look.
I'm going to take a look at this. I think it has the same thing. It's kind of like the 4 Series handles, right? Or i4.
i4. It's been a while since I've driven the i4. I didn't drive it in the winter.
It's your favorite car.
I do like the i4 a lot. You know what? Okay, so shout out to Mirko.
No, it does not have the same handles.
I want to give a shout out to listener Mirko, who and friend of the show, who's been messaging me about the fact that there is an i5 Touring available in Europe. How amazing is that?
That is pretty sick, actually, and I would go for that. I'm going to tell you, I'm driving another vehicle, and I'll talk about it next week, that reminds me of a wagon so much that it's insane that they didn't call it a wagon.
It really bothers me that BMW... Well, here's the thing. BMW is bringing a wagon version of the M5 to North America, right?
Yeah, because if you're going to buy a wagon, if you're going to buy one of the 5 wagons they're going to sell this year, it might as well cost $200,000. Right?
I think they're feeling the heat from the RS6. That's my theory.
Yeah, sure.
But why not make that M5 like the thin end of the wedge that gets us an i5 wagon? Because an i5 wagon would solve every problem I have in my life.
Just you, though. No one else's problem.
Yes, that's true. But I think BMW, I think that's a compelling argument.
I'm going to return back to the X3. One of the things that a lot of people have criticized with BMW's recent design language shift has been the size of their kidney grills. Not only that, but they're illuminated now, which is also a very interesting thing to see in the middle of the night. These two like thin circles flanked by headlights. I don't know. I'm not all about these kidney. I'm okay with the kidney grills. To me, the illumination seems a little much. It reminds me of the illuminated star emblem on Mercedes-Benz, which feels like a little gaudy sometimes. But I can guess that this is going to be a pre-polarizing design language. Beyond these like exterior changes, though, big things inside is there's more cargo room. I actually really appreciated the amount of cargo room because I find that a lot of compact crossovers can't swallow my kid's stroller. I have like a full-size stroller that is kind of cumbersome to put in and out of some crossovers, and this one just handles it no problem.
Well, the X3 is pretty tall inside, from what I remember.
It is okay. It's okay. I don't have any issues with the height of it.
No, but in terms of cargo compartment, like as a bonus.
I found the width to be perfect because I'm not really. These things fold, right? These strollers.
You're not standing up inside there with it, like you're in the back of a Sprinter van.
I would love that, man. But no,
you had an X3 that was as tall as a Sprinter van. Isn't that what the Pope drives in?
No, just a Sprinter van in general. But yeah, sure. But the major thing inside is the change of a lot of the controls have really gone. They've gone weird, man. Like,
what does "gone weird" mean to you?
Things have. For example, let's talk about fan controls.
Okay.
If you wanted to change or vent controls, if you wanted to change the direction of your vents and make them blow in a slightly different location than they're currently blowing, you would just like toggle a little switch on the vent itself, point them in a new direction.
Like
right?
manually push it back and forth.
That's right. This car, those toggles are somewhere else in the vehicle. They're either beneath they're in the door panel for the ones that are blowing from around the A-pillar. And then there's ones
Are they physical controls?
They are physical controls. They look like tiny little joysticks.
Yeah, if you look at... So in the M5, I had sliders. Like touch sliders.
And then I have that to control the flow of the air. And I found that to be very, very strange because I don't know how... I don't think I appreciate... Okay, let me get this straight. Instead of just putting like a regular little knob or little thing that you would switch on and off...
That does both things, right? Like
that does both of those things. Yeah, can change the vent flow and the direction of the air. Instead, I've got a knob somewhere else and then a little slider that goes 1 to 0 because that's the way they calculate things, 1 to 0.
Well, it's on and off. If you were a robot, you would understand that.
And you slide it, and there's this little line that like illuminates on between this I and this 0, this 1 and this 0. And I don't know if that's a better design language because now you've got a bunch of these like lines and 1s and 0s throughout the cabin, and I think that looks ridiculous.
Just think about the fact that it could be so much worse, though, Sammy. It could be an on-screen menu that's only accessible via another on-screen menu.
I found out that there are a lot of in-screen infotainment screen menus to control things I would have wanted to be adjustable while driving without a menu. For example, changing the gap in the adaptive cruise control, that has to be done through the infotainment system, which I don't think is a
that's true
safe
of almost
way to do it.
No, I agree with you. That's true of almost every BMW I've driven over the last couple of years. And when you first set the adaptive cruise control, system flashes up to tell you that it's using like an automatic gap adjustment.
Oh,
I don't know if you've noticed that.
That's cool.
And
I didn't have that.
There's, like you said, there's no steering wheel controls for it. And I'm not the kind of person who would go into the infotainment system while I'm driving to change the gap control, because I'd have to look for it to find it. It's a little complicated. The BMW system generally does a pretty good job of gapping up or keeping its distance, but it seems strange that it's not a readily available control. Because, like, what are you replacing it with exactly? Like, what's more important than that on the steering wheel?
There isn't anything particularly important on the steering wheel that makes it there's the same sort of like sliders and like buttons and like D-pad style controls on the steering wheel. I don't understand why that's not there. Additionally, like I was talking about the illuminated grille, you can turn that off, but you have to press a button on the end of the stalk, and then that brings up a screen on the infotainment screen that will tell you all about your lighting settings. And then in order to turn off the grille illumination, the car has to not be in drive.
I do think it's cool. I think it's cool that you could turn it on and off, though.
Yeah, I do like that you could turn it on and off, but I found it strange that I had to park my car in order to do that.
It's probably they don't want you to be distracted like you would be if you're looking for the gap adjustment on the adaptive cruise control.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will admit I do appreciate the infotainment system because it's a fairly responsive touchscreen system, and there's a knob, although I believe they're phasing out the knob, the iDrive controller, in the future.
Yeah, but I've seen that reported as well.
I was fine with the way the infotainment system works. I just find that it's too much stuff in the infotainment system, which is a shame because the rest of the car is actually quite nice. I've got a ton of LED lighting in this vehicle. It feels like a gaming PC with the amount of like RGB lights in here. I love ambient lights. Like, I think it's super cool. I love it when they're I like
having my feet illuminated while I'm driving, and my passengers' feet.
I like it. I like it when it's responsive. Like, if I think at one point I think I hit the throttle. Oh no, I was using the efficiency mode, which changes the tachometer into like a little like bar graph that goes up and down depending on how efficient or inefficient you're driving.
Remember
when the lighting in the vehicle started changing in response to that as well, and I thought that was sick.
So it had like a punishment light when you weren't driving efficiently enough? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it just changed from blue to white instead.
So remember when Ford used to have the little leaves that would grow on the dashboard and the
or
gauge
was it
cluster?
A butterfly in one of the other cars as well? I think in the EV, in the Focus EV, it was a butterfly maybe?
I'm surprised the Focus EV had enough power to illuminate a butterfly, given that it was like a 12 kilowatt hour battery. It was so tiny. Yeah, it was just a fun little thing where you'd be driving and you could grow these vines or this tree or whatever, and then when you were driving like a maniac, the tree would slowly die. It was like a Tamagotchi that you fed with Earth vibes, pretty much. I'm
gonna read you the Wikipedia article on this Ford. It was actually the Ford Focus. It's first of all, it's called the Smart Gauge with Eco Guide, is the name of this display. In the Fusion Hybrid, it had growing green leaves. In the Focus Electric, it used blue butterflies to represent the surplus range beyond the driver's charge point destination. As more butterflies are shown, the greater the range is, and the blue butterflies gradually disappear as the car's battery is depleted. Ford said the designers were inspired by the butterfly effect. A phenomenon, not the movie.
The movie with Ashton Kutcher?
Not the movie.
You think he got a piece of that?
Yeah.
Every Ford Focus Electric, Ashton Kutcher gets $10.
That's so right? He got like, that's not in the Ford Mustang now.
$200.
There's no blue butterflies.
No.
There's no butterfly effect anywhere. I loved all those gimmicks. Although I think the easiest one to like grasp was the Volt, which had this little like orb that would go like up or down depending on how you were driving. You just wanted to keep it centered. While
it's like a spinny orb, right?
Yes, yeah. But all this talk about the gimmicks of this BMW, I have to reiterate that the main reason to buy a BMW is with their driving manners, and I think BMW has probably some of the best tuned transmissions in the industry. I think they have the best transmissions. They find
the ZF, right? It's still the ZF.
It is a ZF. Yeah.
This is the same general transmission design that it's been using for like 10 years. They continually update it. And instead of throwing it away and installing like, oh, we're going to a 9-speed now, we're a 10-speed, like we've seen so many car companies do, and then all the teething problems that come with those transmissions, it really feels like BMW has hit upon a strategy that just works for them.
And I don't know what it is, but the ratios are so good too. Like, I mean, I had the fast version. I had the fast version of this car, which is called the M50. It has nearly 400 horsepower from a turbocharged 3-liter 6-cylinder
394,
engine.
I think.
Yeah, 393. And yeah, it's a bit jumpy off the throttle because of just how much power and torque it's putting down. And like I said, I think that these gear ratios are super aggressive with the first couple of gears. It always feels like if you put your foot down in any kind of an aggressive manner, whether or not you want to make a quick pass or a lazy pass, you're tired of being in someone's blind spot, this car always finds the gear that does that in the way exactly that you want it to do. It doesn't like slam into a gear and take off unless you want it to. It can just glide away, which I found really, really nice. According to Car and Driver, it's probably a 4-second 0 to 60 time, which
insane.
is pretty good.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is. Like, no one out there needs a vehicle this fast as a daily driver, and yet they are falling from the sky. You can find them in almost every automaker's parking lot, dealership, showroom, whatever. It's not companies like Hyundai now. You can get an EV that will, essentially tie this BMW in a straight line. It's wild.
Yeah, and that's crazy that it needs an electric vehicle for some things to pull that off. There's the alternate option for the 6-cylinder motor it's called the 30X drive. It features a 4-cylinder engine, turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 255 horsepower
and
should do.
Sorry, go on.
Should do 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds.
So I'm driving currently the 330 so it's the 3 Series, but that same engine, which is essentially the same platform, obviously a lot lighter. So we'll be talking about that next week.
This powertrain, like I can't get over the benchmark BMW has set with powertrains. I still think that they're doing a great job with the powertrains. These are, I think they're heavy vehicles. I need to double check the weight of this 25, which is somewhere around 4,500 pounds.
I believe that the 4-cylinder models are also 48-volt mild hybrids. Is that the same for the one you were driving with the 6-cylinder?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That might account for some of the jumpiness off the line.
It could. I didn't it felt like throttle tip-in was just really aggressive. So I would probably actually recommend the 4-cylinder because I think that is plenty powerful. Probably gets you better fuel efficiency at about 27 mpg city and 33 highway, while the M50 is 2 miles per gallon worse in both scenarios.
So what would you compare this to, and would you recommend it over them? I think we already know the answer to the second part of that question because, as you said, you've described this as being a leader in the luxury SUV segment. But what else would people drive if not this?
It's just the interior that I think stresses me out from recommending it. I do love those ambient lightings, but I don't like some of these controls that are going on. I think that the competitors, the really good competitors in this class, are the Macan and the GV70. I've had a really
those are two radically different price points too.
I'm not sure about the GV70. Sorry, GV70 and the Macan.
Yeah, because the Macan can go way, way high.
The Macan has a starting price where the BMW X3 kind of tops out. Okay,
the X3 or the X3M.
I have the X3 M50. So
I'm just saying, like, is the Macan more expensive than an X3M at the base?
No.
Okay.
So the 4-cylinder model starts at $50,000, while the 6-cylinder model that I drove, not the M, but the M50, is $65,000. And in fact, my fully loaded version was closer to $73,000 US, and just shy of the $85,000 Canadian pricing.
That's a lot of money for an entry level compact.
It's a lot. That's why I'm saying that I think the 4-cylinder one is probably the better pick because. Just off the bat, that's a $15,000 difference.
Yeah,
right?
That makes that. I think I'm in agreement with you on that.
And then I think the GV70 is pretty good, but it's probably getting a little old now, like long in the tooth. I don't know what it is. I cannot fall in love with the GLC. I think that there's something that's just stopping me from feeling.
That's the Mercedes.
That's the Mercedes. The GLC Mercedes has really, I struggled to connect with it. I don't know if it's just ever since they've, like the GLK I liked. And then I don't know, something with the GLC has not really done it for me. There's like a flimsiness to the interior. There's a laziness to the powertrain. And there's an ambiguity about the exterior design that just doesn't make me connect to it with it in any way. And I know that I'm like in the wrong in this because I think it's a very popular vehicle.
It's interesting that you describe it as right or wrong in terms of having an opinion on an SUV.
Look, I just know that it's a very popular car, popular SUV that a lot of people have, and it must be working for some people, right?
You know, you look at a vehicle like the X3 starting at around 50 grand, you said, right? 50 or 55?
50.
So for that same money, you could get an MDX. An entry-level MDX, which is a larger vehicle. That's why I'm bringing it up. Do you think that there's a compelling reason to go up a segment, you know, pick up an RX, pick up an MDX, or do you think the X3 is still a better buy over something like that?
Well, I mean, I think there's a tangible difference in effort between the two vehicles. I think Acura has kind of really been slacking on some of its pillars that are supposed to be part of the Acura like nameplate. Acuras are supposed to be fun to drive. They're supposed to also have very good powertrains. I don't think the MDX represents those two elements at all. And for a premium vehicle, I think it's starting to get outdone by mainstream vehicles like Mazda interiors.
Wow,
and
that's a strong statement.
I don't think it's nice, man. I don't think it's doing the job there.
Okay,
there are other like so-called premium vehicles like the Aviator. Lincoln Aviator I think has a very attractive interior, offers a ton of space, 3 rows, could get it with a plug-in hybrid powertrain. I don't know if that's still the case, but I would imagine that would be one of those few vehicles that I think is punching above its badge in a couple of ways. But I think the X3 it's a staple. Like I said, I was surprised that this is an all new generation that, you know, every journalist should be driving this. Everyone should be reporting on this, and everybody should be getting the report that the X3 is still a very good compact luxury crossover.
Now, I noticed you did not mention the Q5.
Q5 I haven't driven in a long time, and I find it to be a decent step better than the GLC, the Mercedes GLC that I talked about, and that's it. It just feels like a I don't know. There's always some a lack of like luxury appointments to those ones. Like the leather doesn't feel, or the cabin doesn't quite feel as impressive in some of those Audi vehicles, and the technology just doesn't like wow you in the same way that a BMW does. The other options in this segment is probably going to be the Lexus NX, which is also available with a plug-in hybrid powertrain. Definitely less fun to drive, but if fuel efficiency is where you're at in this class, and I think the design on the NX is quite nice, I think that's the other alternative here.
All right, well, moving on from the X.
Tell me what we're moving on to.
So I have a couple of vehicles I wanted to provide updates on, and
okay, sure.
They're both vehicles that, in a sense, one we did talk about directly on the show recently. The other is a different version of something I talked about in the fall. So I'll start off with the GV80 from Genesis. Back in, I want to say November, it might have been October, I drove the GV80 Coupe, which is essentially identical to the standard GV80, except it's got that sloping rear roof line that gives it kind of visual drama that's maybe missing from a traditional SUV. Nothing else about the vehicle is really any different for the most part.
Okay. Did the non-coupe, the coupe dumps the third row?
Third row?
Isn't there 3 rows in a GV80?
Let me, I don't think so. But
I thought there were 3 rows in a GV80.
I didn't think Genesis had a 3-row vehicle.
I think you're very confused.
I'm looking at it now. It's funny. I found a picture of like.
I remember it having power 3 rows.
It's 2-row or 3-row. You don't have to get it. That's why. Yeah, the GV80 has an optional 3-row configuration. But what's funny is there's a version. Genesis has this publicity photo, and I don't know what it's from, but it's like a GV80 coupe with like a roll bar or a stiffening bar on the shock towers in behind the second row, and it has 4 racing seats instead of just like standard buckets.
Cool.
I'm not sure what that image is from. Maybe it's from a concept, but I think the other difference.
I'm sorry, I took you off your game there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a completely irrelevant question, but it did manage to reveal the fact that I wasn't aware how many rows the one that I had only had 2 rows because I did pack a bunch of stuff in the back and I didn't notice the pop up. In any case, I think the other difference...
Right. Seating for 5. Yeah, go ahead.
The other difference is I don't think you can get the small engine in the coupe. I think the coupe is like the twin turbo V6, whereas I think you can get a 4-cylinder turbo in the GV80. I had the V6 in both of them.
Okay.
And the difference isn't big. It's like 300 horsepower versus 375 horsepower. But I think that the torque is really kind of what you're looking at there in terms of why you would upgrade. It's any case, I found myself liking the standard GV80 a lot more. And I realized it's a really arbitrary thing to say. There was nothing wrong. I'm not going to relitigate the GV80 coupe because we talked about it in depth on a previous episode. There's nothing wrong with it. But I kind of feel like just the body style of the GV80, the shape of it, the standard SUV looks a little bit better, maybe more dignified, more muscular than the truncated version of the coupe. It's obviously more useful in terms of cargo space because you have the taller ceiling in the back. And I just felt more comfortable with the design. It just seemed like more what I do. It's easier to recommend anything that's not an SUV coupe because SUV coupes are really an affectation. It's if you're buying this, you're not getting the practicality that maybe you would in any other SUV. So like, why are you doing it? And if it's styling, I don't think the GV80 coupe looks good enough to overcome the lack of practicality or the less practicality. I also don't think there's any real additional performance that would make it appealing from behind the driver's seat. Sorry, from behind the steering wheel.
Okay.
So like, my call would be get the GV80 regular size. Don't get the 3-row because I don't think you really need a 3-row configuration in a vehicle of this size. I think it's much better experience as a 2-row.
I found out that it's a very obscure way to get it. There's only one version of the vehicle that gets it. It's the 3.5T Advanced.
And if you look at the way Genesis describes the 3rd row, they say it's perfect for quote unquote growing families, carpooling, and play dates. AKA no one who's going to remember being back there, no one you have a relationship with, and kids who are going to fit. That's pretty much the only people you're going to be stuffing in the 3rd row. And that's so true of any like non-full size vehicle with a 3rd row seating.
Right.
But again, I had a lot of conversations with people about the car and pointing out things like the details inside the interior, which still really remain a strong point for Genesis, especially with like the diamond stitch seating and the details that you'll find on the dashboard and the door panels. Kind of the opposite, I think, of what we were talking about with the X3, which is going to more smoother elements and maybe, I hesitate to use the word plasticized, but I think the surfaces just aren't as visually or tactile in terms of their detail as they used to be. And I think Genesis does still bring that to the table. I also do think, though, that it is kind of falling behind a little bit. Maybe it's time for a rethink of the interior and the exterior on a more wholesale level to keep up with the rest of the market. There's nothing about this vehicle feels dated, but it is kind of apart from some of the other options in its segment.
I mean, I think Genesis used to be really... Genesis, to me, made an impact in the class for showing a lot of detail, small details in its interior design language. So like really nice feeling tactile controls, really gorgeous feeling upholstery, and then additional stitch details that I think nobody was expecting when the GV80 and the other Genesis vehicle kind of showed up. Now it's been around for a little while. I don't know if this is a 2nd generation product yet or just like a really heavily refreshed version of the 1st gen, but I'm worried that the impact that it used to make is starting to wane a little bit.
You think so?
Yeah, with those elements, because we want to see something, we want to see progression and evolution, unless that's just it, right? Like that's all Genesis wants to showcase, is that we've got these details, this is what you're going to know us for, and that's it.
There's one more detail about the coupe that I forgot about. It has an electrically driven supercharger in the coupe.
Right.
And it boosts power to 409 horsepower and 405 pound-feet of torque instead of 375. I never felt that extra power.
Okay, you didn't miss it.
I didn't miss it. And I also don't think that this is the kind of vehicle that you drive in an aggressive way. It's more about, confident touring, I would say, than it is about any kind of, shenanigans on a back road or something like that.
Okay, that's fair. And so, yeah, no unnecessary third row, decent powertrain, smooth handling, I imagine.
Yeah,
or
I do want to shout out the fact that also the GV80 and the coupe have gone to a full rectangular screen on the dashboard instead of any kind of actual any kind of actual gauges or binnacle for the gauge cluster. Not a fan of that whatsoever. I think that detracts from the amount of effort that's been put into other areas of the interior. But this is where everyone is going. Pretty much every vehicle has decided to ditch the expense of forming a full dashboard in favor of these screens. I can't really knock them for it, but I'm not a fan of it because it looks so plain and ugly when it's off on every vehicle. And when it's on, you're still looking at a screen. It's like, what is that? Like, it's very hard to get the personality of an automobile from a graphics package on an LCD screen, in my opinion.
And there's a bit of glare that can occur on those in certain times of day.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but I'm sure there's some situations where it would be a problem. It's not like the Swarovski crystals on the BMW shifter levels of glare, but yeah. It's also more affordable than like an X5. So keep that in mind too. And I really like the X5. I think it's great, but I don't think the Genesis GV80 is in any way a step down, unless you're exclusively focused on the super muscular versions of the X5 that are out there.
Exactly. Okay. What's the other vehicle you wanted to give us an update on?
So we talked about this other vehicle, I want to say last week. Is that accurate? Oh, not last week because we didn't have an episode. Previous episode.
Yes.
I took the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid that, Sammy, you hated so much all the way to see you in Toronto. I put like 1,500 kilometers on it or something like that, maybe more. So that's, about 1,000 miles of driving. And I was super focused on all of the things you disliked about the vehicle to see if they would trigger me as well.
Okay, yeah.
Or maybe I'm more tolerant. And I have some surprising information to report to you.
Oh, no. Okay.
The first thing is I did not have a problem with the infotainment system.
Really?
Which functioned as a touchscreen the entire time I was driving it.
What? No, it didn't.
Every single feature was available.
That's insane.
Through touch. No problem. I was... like you said, it's a bit of a lean and it's annoying to have to reach to that screen because they don't want you to do it. But I had read that it's possible to put the vehicle in touchscreen mode through a menu option. And I'm assuming that...
Oh, okay. Right.
I'm assuming that someone before me had done that.
Okay.
So
I looked for such a thing. I know that the other vehicles that I was driving, the 90 and the 70, don't have that option.
The thing that kind of bothered me about it, though, is every time I would start it, it would load Android Auto. And it would start in the background, so I would hear whatever podcast I had been listening to or whatever music I've been listening to. But the screen doesn't show you Android Auto. You have to select it. It just shows you like the generic Mazda menu system. And you have to go into entertainment and then select the name of your phone on Android Auto, and then it pops up. So it's weird.
There's a faster way to do it that is not obvious when you look at the screen. You have to like nudge the little joystick up or down, the knob. It says, like, if you look at the split screen setup, it shows you the knob and then it shows you the Android Auto logo.
See,
and it's very obscure looking.
Yeah, 1,000 miles of driving, I didn't pick up on that.
So silly.
I don't think it's great UI to play something without showing it on the screen initially. I think that, and by that I mean not necessarily the audio content, but if you're going to load Android Auto, I think it should load it over top of whatever you're looking at so that you know it's active. I mean, I know an icon appears on some vehicles, but not on all of them, and certainly not on the Mazda. So that would be my only complaint there. Fuel mileage, though, I am right there with you on how bad this hybrid vehicle was. Are you ready for my average over 1,600 kilometers?
Okay.
9.2 liters per 100 kilometers, which translates into 26 miles per gallon versus
and 26 mpg on a hybrid vehicle.
On a hybrid vehicle that's rated at 38, I believe. Let me double check that number. But yeah, it's 38 combined. So I'm not even touching the combined. Most of my driving was highway. Mm-hmm. It's rated at 37 highway. Even though most of my driving was highway, I did do a lot in town for the week. I was 5 days in the city, and it marginally improved. I think at one got it up to like 8.7 or something like that. But then as soon as I went back on the highway, above 9. That's a 32% drop. And it was cold while I was driving. And on the way to Toronto, I was facing crazy winds. I mean, winds that were moving every vehicle on the highway all over the place.
Okay.
At first I thought
that should add into it, no?
At first I thought that was the reason why I was getting such poor fuel mileage. But then the next 5 days of driving plus the return trip home with no wind did not improve things. And the temperatures were not crazy cold. There was one day maybe where it was around like minus 15 Celsius, which is, I don't know, 4 degrees Fahrenheit, something like. I'm not exactly sure on the Fahrenheit conversion, but most of the time it was right around freezing. So to lose like a maximum amount of efficiency, more than 30%, is frankly astonishing to me.
Yeah.
For a vehicle like this. The only thing I can think of, and this doesn't make sense because if the official rating is 38, then they must have approved that at the EPA. So that means in fair weather it's doing okay. But I was trying to think did Mazda just were they not able to accommodate the weight of the battery pack like the Toyota did? Because this is from the RAV4. They borrowed this system. Were they just not able to incorporate it in as efficient a way as Toyota was because they were designing it in from the beginning? And so the way it's installed has required them to add extra weight somewhere. But that doesn't make any sense because it's still getting 38 on a bright sunny day. Would installing a heat pump fix things? I just don't know. But I'm super disappointed with that fuel mileage. One of the reasons why I booked this vehicle for this trip was to get better fuel mileage. And I was like within 4 or 5 miles per gallon of the GV80.
Yeah.
Which is infinitely more powerful, but also a lot larger. So that was quite strange.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't know what, like I said, to me, also, like, how did you enjoy driving it, right?
It was fine. I'm not there with you on it being annoying. My wife did point out that the transmission sounded loud and irritating on acceleration. And there were a number of cases where if you're really holding the throttle to pass somebody or trying to, get out of a situation at a stoplight where you're in the wrong lane, you don't have a lot of guts and it's going to be abrasive. But in general, like on the highway cruising, I didn't have any issues with it in terms of power.
Okay.
I did have a couple of other issues though, if you want to hear them.
Tell me.
I had shaky engine idle on startup in cold weather.
Okay,
I felt vibrations through the gas pedal, which was surprising to me. Another more annoying problem, I had the blind spot monitoring system activating constantly with no traffic beside me, to the point where every time I would change lanes to pass someone on the highway, it would beep at me and it would show.
Yeah, I've had that. I had that in the CX-50 as well.
Really?
I always thought they just had a large grace period for grace space for the blind spot monitor.
No.
But I saw that it was happening without any vehicles nearby, which I found insane.
Yeah, I was on wide open highway with no traffic except what was in front of me. And I had to turn off the blind spot audio warning because it still showed up on the head-up display and on the mirror light that comes on when it's quote-unquote detecting a vehicle in my blind spot. But every time I hit the turn signal, it would beep at me. And that's wild. I haven't had that happen in a modern vehicle in a very long time. It's problematic because if you're always being exposed to a warning about safety, you will tune it out. And so when you actually do need to be aware of a problem, you won't be able to react in time. And we all know what happens in that case.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my opinion of the vehicle. Cargo space was decent. We brought a lot of stuff with us, brought a lot of stuff back. No real problems there. and it was reasonably comfortable. I was kind of, you had really made me scared that I was going to have like this terrible road trip.
Yeah.
And I was so ready to be frustrated with the car. And I wasn't. Like, it was, the interior is fine. I think that the gauge cluster looks a little low rent for the money you're paying for the vehicle. And there's not a lot of features outside of the infotainment system that are in the cluster. But the rest of the interior looks pretty nice. And it's comfy, and it kept me warm, and it's reasonably quiet inside on the highway. So I can't recommend this vehicle based on the fuel mileage alone. Like that, there's no reason to pay. Our Crosstrek gets better fuel mileage than that.
Yeah, of course.
And it is much less expensive and not a hybrid. And if your hybrid is being beaten by an entry-level crossover of similar size, that's a problem. So
Huge.
Mazda needs to figure this out. I don't know what's going on in the winter for them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, I would have.
That was my major issue with it.
If I'd lost like 10 miles per gallon, or 8 miles per gallon, okay, but like dropping 12 miles per gallon really feels like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think this car is like baked. I thought it was not enjoyable to drive. It just didn't have any of that special Mazda element to it. And what it did have was not getting any better. Do you know what I mean? That's what I was saying.
I mean, are winter tires really having that much of an effect on the fuel mileage of this vehicle? Like, that would be my only other thing. I'm seeing some other people who had similar problems in cold weather. So it's just frustrating. Like 30%, like that's the outside edge of what you would expect from a gas engine in very cold weather. And this is a hybrid that's showing it in medium cold, regular cold. All right, I'm going to stop harping on that for now.
No, I think it's fair. I think it's the major issue here. And as a result, it will not be able to succeed without any adjustment to this, right? Like, what? And your fuel efficiency makes it sound like it's not even an improvement over the non-hybrid version of it, right?
I don't know. I haven't driven the non-hybrid version in cold weather, so
yeah. So I don't know. And I also did not enjoy the space inside the vehicle. Of course, I don't think you. Did you have people in the back seats?
No. Let me think about that for a second. No, we had a lot of luggage with us.
Yeah.
We packed it to the brim.
That was my experience with it as well. The rear seats were not good to me, and the cargo space was really limiting too.
No, I was fine with the cargo space. I was okay with it.
Did you pack it to the brim?
Yeah, but we were bringing a lot of stuff. Like I didn't not have room for what I needed. So anyway.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about with this car?
I don't think so.
Okay. What are we talking about next week?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm driving the BMW 330i xDrive. It's the all-wheel drive version of it's like a mild refresh, I think, for the 3 Series, or is this the new generation 3 Series? I think it's the new generation 3 Series.
Okay.
No, not going to back me up there.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Well, it's the I know that the drivetrain with the 48-volt hybrid is brand new for the 3 Series.
Okay.
So it's similar to what Sami was talking about in the X3. I'm driving that now, and I'm going to tell you all about it next week.
And I've got the Toyota Crown Signia, and I'm really eager to talk to you about this hybrid.
Okay.
But if you enjoyed this week's episode, why don't you head on over to our website, Unnamed Automotive Podcast, to give us some notes, man. Give us some feedback. There's a contact form. You fill it out, and all of your thoughts go to the ones you send us will go to our inbox.
Yeah, not all. Don't worry. It doesn't implant a brain implant of some kind. And
implant a brain implant of any kind. No.
The temperature inside your skull will not increase whatsoever.
And of course, if you have any questions or you want us to talk about anything in particular, feel free to let us know what's on your mind, and we'll probably bring it up on the next episode. Additionally, you can reach out to us on social media. You can find Ben on Instagram. He's at Hunting Benjamin. He's also on Blue Sky if you're following that social media network, at Hunting Benjamin, all the same there. You can find me. I'm at Sami_ha like you're laughing on Instagram, and Sami-ha like you're laughing on Blue Sky.
Confusing.
And that's all I got. That was my post-show preamble.
All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Post-amble, I suppose that's what that is.
Thank you for the post-amble, and thank you to everyone for listening.
Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you later.